build a PowerApps editable grid. So today we're going to look at editable grids, right? That's the thing you have in Excel or in InfoPath repeating tables. And a lot of times in PowerApps, we're doing those because we want to have some type of relationship, so parent-child stuff. So what we're going to do today is we're going to work on the mechanics very deeply of how you build editable grids, no matter how you want to use them, you understand how they work. And then I'll show you my pretty demo app and how it is doing parent-child and kind of how that data saves and explain those mechanics, assuming that's the scenario you want. Sound like fun? Then let's switch over to my desktop and take a look. To start, let's look at my editable grid, right? Let's just get an example of what we're kind of looking to build towards in case you're not familiar with the concept. So the idea over here on the left is we have parent data, right? So we got Scuba, Steven, Mo, right? We got all these different people. And so with these different people, we have multiple rows. So like with Scuba, we know that Asher just had a birthday, so he is now 6. So what we can do is jump over here, hit the edit pencil, and then we can change this data to 6, and then we can say save, and then that will save it. When we save it, it even creates us a new blank row down here. If we want to use that row, we can take advantage of it, or we can hit the delete button here to get rid of it. And of course, we're going to also talk about how to add a new row without editing a previous row. So that's my little new button here. And so, for example, by the time you see this video, Quinn will be born, Jeff's daughter, and she will be 0 because she'll be like 3 days old at that point. And we're just going to say that her favorite color is green. Sounds great. We'll say save. Now the data is all there. We can get rid of the blank row or we cannot. It doesn't matter. And then when we do a save all, this will actually push it back to our data source. So then next time if we click away, we'll go to Steven here, who apparently has lots of kids. I don't think that's true. But then if we go back to Scuba, we can see that data is now there because it's in the database correctly. So we're going to learn the mechanics of how this works. We're going to talk about, you can see things going on, like we got the different edit and the save, we got the delete. We notice right now like fave color is disabled because it's not in edit mode. So we want to make sure we understand how that works and just generally mechanically get ourselves wrapped around how all this goes, right? So let's jump over here and we'll create ourselves just a new blank screen. And we're going to start with the basics, right? We don't want to build the pretty thing first. We just want to understand how it works. At its core, a editable grid is really a giant gallery that has controls, right? We always think of galleries as a way to show data, but you can actually use it to interact with data by just adding interactive components. So first thing we'll do here is we're going to insert ourselves a vertical gallery. And then we don't want a data source yet because we don't have a data source. So we'll just kind of blow this away, boom. And we'll just change this to be like, hey, just give me a title, right? So there's just one field, one blank row sitting there. So then now in order to do the editable grid, what you're gonna wanna work with 99 times out of 100 is a collection. So to make this super easy right now, we're gonna insert a button. And in this button, we're going to create a collection that has the data we want. So for example, we're gonna do something like clear collect and then col stuff. I know, very creative. And then now we want to define what information we want. And so in our case, like we want to do just something simple. So we're gonna do like a name column and we're gonna set it to blank, but we know I want it to be text. So we're gonna do the double quote. So it knows it's a blank string. It's setting that column's type as a string value. Then we'll do a comma here. And then we're also gonna do just a simple number field. So we'll call it num. And then we'll put a 0 in there. Oh, that's the 0. So that's kind of defining that column and setting it to a 0 value. So it knows it's a number column. And then we're gonna do a last one, which is gonna be fave color, and we're going to set that to blank. It's going to be a string, but we're going to use that one with a drop down because the first time I made this video like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that was one of the things people struggle with was drop downs. So we're going to make sure they're included this time. Okay, so we'll close our collection and do that. And if you're not familiar with collections, I'll put a link to my collect video up there. It is super popular to help you get the basic mechanics of collections, right? But if we press that button, boop, now we can go over here. We have that collection, so we can say, hey, I want you to show me cool stuff. There's nothing to show, but it is there. Okay, and so just to kind of show that, like if we put here, like you can see it's trying to show this item favorite color. If we do num, because we know that's 0, we're going to see 1, 0. And if we change this button from a clear collect, I don't know why I did clear collect instead of just collect. So we'll just get rid of the clear. We'll just do collect. Now every time I press this button, boop, boop. All right, now I've pressed it 3 times. There's 3 rows in the collection. That's why you see 3 zeros. So that's our first button, right? So we'll just call this our add button for the moment. Now, if we want to wipe out that collection, we just need to insert another button here. And we're going to set this button's code to be clear, not clear collect, just clear. And then our collection name like that. If we press that button, boop, it gets rid of the data, add some rows, delete the rows. Okay. We'll put the word clear on there so we know what that does if we forget. Okay, so let's add a row. So now what we want to do is we want to lay out the row. So let's get rid of that label for the moment. and we're gonna make sure we're there, and we're gonna insert just a new label. I guess I could use one that was just there. But for this one, we're gonna just first say, hey, I just wanted this to say the word name and a colon. And so then that will be where, we have our name, right? So we'll do that. And then to drive the name, what we're going to do is we're going to insert a text input underneath that. And in this text input, we're going to set its default value to be this item dot name. We'll shrink that up a lot because we don't have a lot of space here. We'll get rid of that for now. We'll drag this a little wider. Okay, so that's the name. So then to do the same thing for number, right? Insert a label. We'll go right here. We'll set this one to be number, and then we'll insert another text input. We'll probably scoot this stuff over a little bit. That makes sense, like that. And then we'll say, hey, your default value is this item dot num. And there's the 0 popping in. And then we'll shrink it up as well. And if we're making this look nice, right, they should all be balanced. Right now we're not worried about nice. We're worried about mechanics. How does this stuff work? And so then the third piece here, insert one more label. As you could probably guess, this one is going to say fave color. And then, I put a colon on some, whatever. It doesn't, favorite color like that. Come on, Shane. There you go. And so for this one, we're going to do a drop down. So what we're going to do here is we're going to insert a drop down, right? So under input, drop down. And right there, kind of pull these over. And then for the items, we're just going to do a quick table of red, blue, green. Okay, so there we go. We got our colors. So there is our interface, right? And so the idea now is if we were to add a row, right, we're just going to keep seeing more and more of those. We noticed the little blue bar over here. So that kind of comes with galleries these days. Where is that thing? Right there. So we're just going to delete that out. Okay, it looks dumb. Okay, so now we have our editable grid. Now, obviously, just putting information in these fields isn't going to save anything. So we need to add the ability to save. So what we're going to do, we're going to make sure we're in our row. I almost messed that up. We'll go here and we're going to insert us a save icon, right? So we'll do save, little icon, little floppy disk. And so with the save icon, what do we want to do? We want to use our patch function. So patch, what table we want to patch? We want to patch Cole stuff. And then what record do you want to patch? Well, I want to patch this item, right? Because the gallery is Cole stuff. So this item is the current record we're on, and that's the one we want to update here. So we're going to do that. And then our formula here is going to be something like this. Name is going to be, so if we look over here, we have text input 1. We're going to rename this to INP name. We're going to rename this one to INP num. And then we're going to rename this dropdown to DDFC for favorite color. All right, we're going to make our formula writing a little easier. So we got name, and then we're going to say, well, you are input name.text. And then for our number field, this one is going to be value function, right? The value function takes a text number. So right now, a text input always outputs a text value. Even if you type number 12, it's really just putting out the text 1 and 2. So we need to turn the text 1 and 2 into the number 12. So you use the value function to do that. So we're going to say, hey, value on input num.text. So that will turn that, like we said, we're going to type 12 in a second. It'll turn the 1, 2 into a 12. And then third, for favorite color, that's going to be our dropdown. So dropdown FC dot selected and then dot value. So then that's going to return red, blue, green, whatever value we've chosen. So we'll close that and that. And I guess I'll say if you don't know anything about patch, you should probably watch that video up there. Be helpful. You don't have to, but you should. So now let's try this. So let's hit play. Let's clear, right? So there's nothing. We're going to add our first blank row. We're going to set the name to be Buddy, the number to be 3, I don't know. And we'll say his favorite color is blue. And so now we're going to hit save. Boop. And so if we look at our collection, right, we know that the gallery has the same data, but if we look at our collection, so Cole stuff here and hit the drop down, blue, Buddy, 3. Yeah, it saved our data. So that's our first step in an editable grid, right? We need the ability to save the data. Now, the whole idea, especially in a parent-child relationship, is when they save that first row, we want to create a second row automatically. So in order to do that, what we can do is we're going to just go back here to our add code, right? We know that that adds a row. So what if we just copy that go to our save button, and then we do a semicolon, and then we're going to hit enter. We don't have to hit enter. I like to divide all my things into separate lines, make it easier to read, and we're going to paste that in. So now anytime you save a change for a row, it's going to add a second blank row. So let's just start over again, right? So we'll say clear, we'll say add our first blank row, right? We'll do buddy, and we'll set it to 4 this time, and we'll set his favorite color red. That's fine. We'll hit save, boop. And look, now we have a new blank row. And so if we go set this one to Chewy and set it to 8 and set his favorite color to blue and say save, we get another blank row. And once again, trust but verify. So let's just look at Cole's stuff directly and just make sure that those values are what we expect, right? Red and blue are right, Buddy, Chewy, 4 and 8. And then the third blank row with a 0 number on it. So, all right, I feel good. All right, so now what I want to do is think about this a little bit more and think about, okay, so if that's saving the data, once it's saved, we probably want to control the mode, right? Like we don't want them just to have this and keep willy-nilly. Like remember when we were over here, we had to hit the edit pencil before we could save. So how do we do something like that? So what we're going to do there is we're going to insert another icon. Let's insert the edit pencil, right? I feel like that's pretty obvious where we're headed. There's our edit pencil. The edit pencil, like your first gut reaction, I know it was mine when I invented this, 1,000 years ago, right? Can you believe I actually invented this like in 2018? I know, it's all weird. But when I came up with this, like my first reaction is, I'll use a variable to control that, right? Because variables is how we control things to do things. But a variable would affect all the rows, all the fields. That's not going to work. So what you need to do is we actually need to drive a field in the collection that controls, is this an edit mode or not? So we're going to kind of go back downhill, right? So we're going to go back to here and we're going to say, hey, we want to have another field that says is edit. And then we're going to set that to true. Okay, so now there's a is edit field, and by putting true here, that means it is a Boolean field. Oh, I forgot the words. And so with that being a Boolean, it's going to be either true or false, and we can make decisions based off of that. So now if we go back here, we're going to say clear. We're going to say add. So when we add a row, now we've got that field in here. And so what I want to do in this case is a few things. First, I want to look at the save button. I'm like, hey, I should really only see this button if it is in edit mode. So we're going to go to the visible. And we're going to say visible is this item dot is edit. So that makes that show up. Now, obviously the edit pencil itself should probably be the opposite, right? Which is not. So let's do that. So we'll go there and we'll say, hey, you're visible. If not, this item is edit, right? Remember, not is the opposite. So if it's true, it's false. False, it's true. So now because the item is edit is true, the not of that is false. So that icon currently doesn't show up. Right? Because you can't edit and save at the same time. It's like one or the other. So that's how we get the save button to show up. Now we want to make these fields go along with that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to these fields and I'm going to select all 3 at once. So I'm going to hold down my control key and click on all 3, right? See how they're all 3 highlighted? So when you do that, that then lets you edit all of the properties that those fields have in common at once. And so all of them have a display mode. So right now it's all edit. We're going to change this and we're going to say something to the effect of, if this item is edit, then display mode dot edit, right? When they're in edit, when the record says is edit is true, we want to be able to edit them. So we need these to be in edit mode. So that works. If they're not, then we want to be in display mode dot view. So they kind of look like labels. Not kind of look like labels, exactly like labels. So now if we hit play, so right now we've got the data. And so then what we want to do here, right? We would go back in, we're like buddy and 5 and it doesn't matter, green. Now, before we hit save though, let's look at this again. So let's look at our on select. So the on select here, right? We know that we patched all these fields, but now what do we want to do? We want to patch one more field, right? We want to patch is edit and we want to set it to false, right? Because we don't want it to be in edit mode when you hit save. We want to go back to the is edit is false so that we see the edit icon and they have to kind of do that and change the behavior. We also know when we create that new blank row though, if you're creating a new blank row, of course it's going to be is edit is true because we want to be able to edit that row. So that looks good to me. So if we hit play, so let's type in again. I shouldn't have typed in the first time, buddy, 5 and green. So if we hit save, right, look what all happened. So first for this row, because isEdit is false, all of these are just labels at this point. Much better, right? The save button doesn't show up because it only shows up if edit is true and isEdit is false. And then the pencil shows up because it is the opposite of isEdit. So since isEdit is false, the opposite of that is true. So the pencil shows up. And then we got a new blank row and its edit mode is true. Now we need to add some code here to our pencil. And so what do we want our pencil to do? He just has really one job at this point, right? He is going to do something like patch stuff this item. And the only field that he's going to patch is edit is true. So if you press that button now, what would happen? Boop. We're going to get a new get that row back in there, right? So we are in a spot where, we can now start editing that data again, and then we can make the changes and hit save. So if we change this to be, oh, you know what? This keeps defaulting to the wrong favorite color. I need to fix that, but let's just do this first. Blue, and we hit save. So that all gets set and it creates another blank row. So we need to fix that. We're gonna get to be blank rows, but I also realized now we need to fix the dropdowns. Let's go back to edit mode. So the problem with the dropdown, and this was the mistake that people made with the first version of this video 7 years ago. Goodness gracious. So if you go here, we got to set the default for it as well. And so its default, all you have to do though, is set it to be this item dot fave color. And now it shows up as blue, right? And if we take this other one and save it as green, right? It's all working the way that we would expect. All right, so now what I want to think about for a minute though is like, how do we want to handle these extra rows? And so what it comes down to, we know that when we're clicking on this save icon, that it just says, hey, always create a new row every time they save. So in reality, we don't want to do that. We really just want to do that the first time it is saved. So over the years, I've done this method a lot of different ways. You can do it based on like row numbers and are we at the bottom of the table? You can do it based on like tracking a column. You could just say, I'm always going to do it, make the users delete it. Like it just depends on what you want. But I think what we're going to do for this one is we're going to add another piece. I think this is the most likely scenario in my head, right? So we're just going to add another column to our table. Right? Columns are free. And we're just going to call this is first save. I would never call it something that big, but that just makes it easier for us. And so we're going to say is first save is true. And so now if we kind of clear and we add, we have that column available. And so we're going to say, hey, when we patch this now, what I want you to do is I want you to say is first save is false. And before I do that though, I think I'm going to do, we're going to move this collect above. So we're going to pull this above and we're going to say if this item is first save, then do that. And if not, don't do anything, right? So this is going to say, hey, if this item's value of first save is true, and so the first time the row gets created, it will be true, then go ahead and create a new row. If the first save is not true, so if it's false, then don't do anything and just do your regular patch. Now we also need to go up here and remember to update our code and say is first save to true, right? Every time we create a new row, we want to make sure that it's in that first save mode. But so now let's clear. Let's make sure we did this right. So let's do this again. We'll do buddy. We'll do 2. We'll do green. Make sure that fix worked as well. We'll say save. So we got a new row. And then we'll do one more new row. So we'll just make sure that still works. Right? Anytime you do this, go ahead and take a couple of fake rows just to make sure that like whatever you did doesn't work for only one row. I've seen people get themselves in those types of confusion. But then now we should be able to say edit on this row. We should be able to change buddy's number to 21. And if we say save here, we get the save of 21, but we did not get a new row down here. Same thing, let's edit this one, make sure we'll change this to 33, still good. And then now if we go down here and just add another one for Ferguson, and then we'll go ahead and set this to 4 and red, sure. We'll say save, we get a new row. Cool, okay? So we're getting what we wanted. We just had to carry around a piece, right? And so that's one of the key lessons. If we go in here, oh, I don't know why it won't let me click on the icon directly, well, whatever. But so basically when you make these editable grids, all the functionality, anything you want to track, you're going to put into your collection. And then once it's in your collection, you're going to make decisions based off of that, right? You can't use variables inside here because if I had any type of variable, it's going to affect all the controls, not just the controls on a specific row, which is most likely what you need. Other techniques that you might have to deal with is to say that, as you start looking at editing existing data, right? So you start using and putting this data back, which I'm going to show you in the other one in just a second. Then you might need to add another row to your collection, like is new, and then that would be false for all the records you pulled out of the database. But if they add new rows, then it would be is new is true. So then that way, when you go to patch it back to your Dataverse table, your SharePoint list, any of those fun things, then you're going to, you're going to have different logic, right? Because if it's an existing row, you got to do this. If it's a new row, you got to do this. And so you're going to kind of get into scenarios like that. But once you mechanically start to play with that, right? And that's why we start with very simple, not frilly screen here to build this. And I want you to do the same when you build it for the first time at home. The mechanics, once you kind of get the hang of them, they all make sense. They're all just very logical. It's just like, hey, every new scenario you need to apply it to comes into play. You just apply your simple mechanics, a little piece, and you build a complex solution. Same thing if you want to go parent, child, grandchild. I've done this same things with grandchild data, right? We just have one more little piece to carry around. That's what a lot of this looks like. The other piece of this puzzle you might have here, of course, would have been we had a delete button, right? So if they're the trash, and it is super straightforward, but all we got to do on the trash can out here is we would say something like remove stuff, this item, and then that's going to delete that out. Now, once again, if you're editing existing records, then you'd have to add logic to also remove it from the database. And then you would most likely, instead of just having this trash can delete it right off the bat, you would want to add some type of confirmation screen. Like, are you sure you want to delete this? Because it's going to be gone forever. So that's how all these fun stuff works. So now that we kind of have our head wrapped mechanically around this, let's go back over here and look at the pretty version and see some of the other features that are in that one. So we'll go back over here. Now, speaking of this one, remember you can download this working app if you're a subscriber over at training.poweraapps911.com. And so you can take advantage of this, right? It's whether you sign up for any of our classes, any of the paid classes, all include this, okay? So to that end, so over here, let's kind of start looking at what's happening. So if I hit clear, it clears it all out. If I hit the new button, look, it's that same type of thing that you were seeing before, right? We just got some different columns here. And then we've got an is edit, is new, and a ID column, right? And so this is a little bit more complicated. We're not going to get into all the mechanics because this is driving a full parent-child relationship. And today we just want to learn to edit the grid. This video is already longer than I wanted to be. But so that's what the new button does. But obviously they're typically not going to press this, and these new and clear buttons aren't going to be in your app, right? So how does this collection really get populated like once the app is live? Well, what'll happen is when they go over here and they want to click on Scuba, so you can see here that what we're doing is we are pulling in, right? So we are filtering the kids table where the parent is the record we just clicked on, right? So we're getting to Scuba's data. And then we're saying, hey, only pull back these specific columns. So, kid's name, age, favorite color, and the ID. And then we are renaming those columns. So we're renaming CR662, right? The system name age to age, and this one to FC, and this one to KN, and this one to ID, right? Because remember, what do we know? What we're trying to do is we're trying to make the collection. We know the collection wants the column names to be this, right? So that's why when we pull in the data straight from the database, we need to rename those columns. Now, you might be saying, why not just leave all the column names the same and have them match? You can, but I find that people get themselves really confused when they have the column names the same in the collection and the data source. When they go to connect those, like with patch or with filters, they're like, which kid's name am I using? And they get their heads wrapped around. So anytime that I do it, if I'm trying to build it so other people can understand it, I always rename all my columns. So then we got, for kid's name, we got KN. And for favorite color, we got FC. So it makes very quick sense how you map the two. But when you're writing your formulas, you know that, first name favorite color equals FC, right? Like that's how you write those and connect the dots. And then we add the extra columns to the collection for the is edit is false and is new is false. This is why you start with this button, even if you're going to delete this out of your app when you go live, but this laid the whole foundation, got it all working. Now I know what pieces I need. So when I'm over here writing this crazy formula, I'm not trying to invent what columns to add at the same time. I'm just trying to get this formula to replicate that so that it puts that into Cool Kids. right? But then that's why now when we press this button, boop, we get all of Scuba's kids, and these two are his dogs, and that's his daughter, but whatever. But yeah, so that's what you're doing there. So that is how that collection is initially getting populated. They're not pressing these weird buttons. If you were starting with a new blank record, maybe the button that navigated you to this screen, right? If you're trying to create a new entry from scratch, then you would have the new button, but you would have the new button here. You'd have the button that navigated you here, have that code in it. So then that gets over here. Over here, this all works the way you think, right? These are all just defaulting the way that we would normally expect. You edit pencil, just sets that is edit to true. We say edit. And then the save button here, it is just patching. Oh, I gotta click on the icon save. So same type of thing we talked about. It is patching Cole Kids, this item, right? That same code, and then creating the new blank line. Now you'll notice here, right? In this one, I didn't even do as well as I did for you guys, because if we change Asher's favorite color to blue and hit save, it's still creating that blank row. So I need to go back into this one and add the code from the other screen so that we don't create a blank row. But it's okay. We understand mechanically how that works. We should be able to do that. I think the delete here, let's see what the delete does. The delete, so it's kind of got two different pieces here. So you notice when we click over here and we created the collection, we set is new to false for all of these, right? So everyone that we pulled in Asher, Winston, and Quinn, they're all is new is false because they're not new data. But when we go to hit save, right? So icon save, we're saying, hey, we want to create a new record. So when we add that new blank row right here, we're going to say is edit is true, and we're going to say is new is true. And so the reason that we're saying is true or is new is true is because what we want to do in a second when we look at the save function is we're going to have to make decisions based off of is new. The same with delete. So we say, hey, if the item is new not, so if it's not new, then we need to remove the data from the actual data source, right? So if they click on delete right now, because Asher is not new, he's an existing record, it's going to delete Asher from the collection and from the actual Dataverse database. Whereas if we go down here and click on delete for this row, is new is true, the opposite of true is false, so this will not happen, so we'll just remove it from the collection, okay? So that's one of the reasons that one of those extra pieces we have to juggle, right? Every little thing that you want to make decisions around, you've got to make decisions around. So then last but not least, and then we'll call this a day, if we look at the save all button, okay? So the save all is going to be something very similar. So we are going to take the Cole collection and we're going to filter Cole collections where the KN, kid's name, is blank or is not blank and put that into Cole Kids. So the idea here is that this is a way for us to filter out this blank row. So if they didn't delete the blank row, it's still sitting there. We don't want to patch the blank row to the database. So this is just filtering that out and recreating the collection without the blank rows. So then that way we know that we're not going to put logic on those. So then we're going to say, hey, for all filter Cole Kids is new, right? So right now we don't have any new. Let's just add a new one, right? So we'll just say Bob and 22 and save, okay? So if we look at our collection now, let's look at our data. So for Cole Kids, we got all the records you'd expect and the blank one, and we have is new is true right here, right? So that is for Bob, and then we have the is new for the blank row, right? The 0 here, this is Quinn, yep, okay? So we've got the data we expect. So let's think about how we're going to process this, right? These three are going to get processed one way, this one's going to get processed another way, and this one's going to get cleared out. So looking at our code again, save all. So this line gets rid of that blank row. This row says filter Cole Kids is new. So this is Bob's record. So we're going to loop through Bob's record. So we just have one. So for all the records, one, Bob. We're going to patch the kids, defaults the kids. So we're going to create a new record for Bob, and we're going to fill in all the data. Then we're going to say for all filter Cole Kids not is new. So this would be Asher, Winston, and Quinn. We're going to take and patch their data with whatever's in the collection now. Now, you could even, if you said, well, that's really inefficient because now you might be repatching those three even though they didn't change. That's fair. So then you could add another field to your collection, some type of like needs updated, right? And so then maybe you only process the fields that need updated. That could be another way to do it, right? Once you kind of figure out your problems, figure out the logic, and then you're probably just adding a field to your collection so you can make decisions off of that. That's the pattern here for editable grids. All right, so when I did the original recording, I kind of said, hey, these are things I would have fixed, like not the delete confirmation and all that. And so I just decided to fix them. And so I was going to show you real quick. The things I fixed is if we do a delete now, so if I go to delete Asher here, you're going to see, are you sure you want to delete Asher? Yes, no. And so the way that works is when you click on the delete, it sets a icon, which creates has the container become visible. And then the code for delete is the same, right? Just some minor adjustments to use gallery selected, but then that way you still have it and it closes it. And if you do no go back, it just closes out the variable, right? So it goes away. So one, right, I added the delete screen. So let's go back and I want to delete Asher. The other thing I did was, remember earlier when we were looking at the favorite color, when it was disabled, right? Because they were in not in edit mode, it had the little weird grayed out drop down. It didn't look very good. So I went ahead and changed the display mode. These were all set originally to be disabled. Now the display mode is set to view. And so then your drop down looks a little bit more realistic. But then when you say edit, it goes back to being a drop down. And then if you save, it goes. Lastly, you notice here that this time, if I say edit, I change Asher's age to 7 and we do a save, we don't get an extra blank row. So I went ahead and put that code in for you as well. And so then that code, as you can imagine, it's the exact same code that we expected. I just put the if this item is first saved logic in there for that. Just a couple of quick changes I made. It was driving me crazy. Remember, if you get this app downloaded from our training.poweraapps911.com, you'll be able to download it with all of these changes as well. All right, back to the original recording. So questions, comments, leave them below. I am always a big fan of your guys' questions and comments. All right, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button too. You slackers, do that for me. Okay? If you had ideas for future videos, other ways you want me to change this, let me know. I am always game. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day.